This is a Heart and Hand production.
Hello and welcome back to Tactics Talk. I'm your host Adam Thornton and I'm joined by my good friend Ally Bain. Ally, how's things with you?
Well, good, thanks, mate. It's this sort of weird hinterland right now of an international break where all of our faces aren't collectively tripping us. So it's what a time.
It's been a roller coaster of a week, month, year, decade. But the last month has been interesting. Been trying to bang the drum on the Rangers prism that look, performances are okay. Like, yes, we all get caught up in as we rightly should in terms of what was the actual score, but I think that's a different thing. You're feeling on something can't be from one extreme to the other just based on one solitary moment in a game. And I think I was going to say I think we're starting to see the benefit of it, but I'm too long in the tooth. I'm not going to jinx myself by saying Rangers are going to do X, Y, and Z. All I'll keep coming back to, and we can talk about it in here, is since Danny Röhl came in, Rangers score the most goals. Rangers create the most chances. Rangers are starting again to concede the least number of goals, and Rangers pick up the most points. That's over 23, 25 games, I think we're at now. If that continues over the next 7 games, then Rangers will win the league. It doesn't mean it's going to. It doesn't mean that everybody will be amazing. It also probably doesn't mean that if we fall narrowly short, everybody is absolutely shit and should be sold. But it will be interesting to see what happens either way. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a throwback, I guess, on this, and we're going to start to look at relationships, player roles, and maybe just a bit of a deep dive into a specific area of the pitch. I had this idea at the weekend there when we were, I was watching the Aberdeen game in the press gantry, and we were talking about how Tuur Rommens just looks like he has been there forever, and how rare that is, that someone just comes in ready to go. There's no caveats of, if we get him back to how he was before, or he's going to need a bit of time to settle in, or he can only play in Europe because that type of football suits him, or all these caveats that unfortunately we've had to put against players when recruitment has been as poor as it has over the last 4 or 5 years. It's really refreshing for somebody just to come in and say, yeah, I'm here, I'm ready to go, I'm starting, I can play most games, fitness dependent. And it got me thinking about that relationship with Mikey Moore. I know way back in the summer, Ali, we were talking about Migoma and Gassama and how we thought that might work, and that might inject a little bit of directness and chaos into the team. I think that probably did, but it's good to see another example here now of Rommens and Moore and the differences that they can bring. So I think we're going to focus on that. We'll talk about the positives of Rommens and Moore, the comparisons to Migoma and Gassama, who have played more football than the other two on that left side, but they've sort of been the four that have played there consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And how we think it's going in general. We spoke about this a little bit off air, but over the last few years, I think it's easy to forget, but we haven't had a lot of consistency in terms of team selection. I genuinely can't think of the last time we had a left back and a left winger, or a right back and a right winger that played more than 15, 20 games in a row together. It is something that the 55 team was built on. We had Barisic, Kent, and Kamara as that sort of left-sided triangle. We had a partnership in defence. We had a three in midfield that knew what they were doing. I think it's not an excuse, but I think the flux and all these changes and people getting injured and out of form and all that sort of stuff, it's got to have an impact, hasn't it? And I think what we're seeing with Rommens and Moore is we're seeing two players that are, first of all, in their own right, very good players. I think they complement each other as well, but I think they've also shown that that's something that we've lacked. Having two players who are in their preferred positions, playing well, can develop, can integrate with each other, and start to reap the benefits. It's something that I think we maybe undervalue a little bit.
Yeah, and listen, I think a lot of this gets caught up in just modern football in general, right? Because if you, again, think of when we were younger, first going to the football, Rangers bought players based on the starting 11 and then the sort of fill-in guys that filled in behind it. So when you built your team, you knew basically going into each season, this is the 11 I'm starting every week. Therefore, I need to have my partnerships almost cast iron. So the guys can then use the season to build it up. And if that relationship isn't working out, we can bring other players in. We can loan during the season. And I guess over time, right, when I think about how sort of rotations come into it, how nowadays we're way more cognizant of players' fitness levels and sort of sharpness and freshness and everything that goes with it. Yeah, I definitely think there's been more of a push towards this sort of laissez-faire. Oh, well, everyone will play with each other. That we're training together all the time. But I think the core fundamentals of it, mate, and this is what we're seeing even with Moore and Rommens, because let's be honest, they've not played a ton together in actual minutes, not even full games, but just even minutes of games. That there is a sort of natural connection there you can see between them. But I also think as well, it goes back to that thing of the personalities. You know, finally, we've got two lads there who generally regard themselves as top players, and not to say that McGoma and anyone else who's played on the left hand side, but certainly Gassama don't see himself as that. There's something, that sort of natural connection there that maybe we've struck upon that, like you said in the past, for whatever reason, whether it just be, again, constant rotation, boys don't see themselves as starters. I mean, think back to the other year, rather, with Jeffy and Cortez. I think there's a lot made of that. Oh, this could work, personality-wise. Just never played. So obviously we know how that all sort of went around. So yeah, no, it's a great point, and certainly something that I think, going back to a more sort of pragmatic approach of, right, we need to know who our best players are. That's a great starting point to begin with for any team, right?
For sure. And they're young as well. We don't want to go overboard because, like you said, there's been a lot of false dawns. But certainly Mikey Moore, I think, is showing the steady progression over the season that makes me think, okay, that's not a flash in the pan. Obviously, why would it be, given how highly rated he is? But Rommens has given me hope, albeit, like you said, it's probably only about 4 or 5 full 90 minutes in total. You can see the difference in there. Okay, so let's talk about the left side then. And what do we mean by that? So it's not obviously left back and left-sided winger, left-sided 10, whatever you want to call it, is I guess the big focus, but it is a bit of a wider thing than that, because you've also got Chukwuani, who more often than not is playing on that sort of left side of central midfield, and they do the centre mids do go wider than you might think at times. I think, was it the Hearts game or the Celtic game? You can see we essentially remove ourselves from the middle of the pitch. I think it was the Hearts game, because obviously McInnes likes to man mark. So we were like removing ourselves from the middle of the pitch and building through and then coming in. So Chukwuani's very much involved in that on that left-hand side. You see him going beyond, whether it's on the outside or the inside, and being that sort of base or that buffer. If Rommens and Moore are further forward, he's in behind them sweeping up. You can see the goal at the weekend there as a bit of an example of Rommens and Moore get in the box, Rommens cuts it back, Moore has the shot, and there's Chukwuani coming in behind them as that sort of second wave of attack that we talk about so much, coming in there to sweep the goal up. So that's a really good example of how the three of them probably work together. I think you also have to mention, and we will do as we go through, but Fernandez as well, as that left-sided centre-half, how important that is to know that Chukwuani can go and attack that ball, because you've got Fernandez behind you who 9 times out of 10 is going to dominate his man and win that ball back and keep things going. So it's the four of them, I guess, form that left side. And I think it's important to mention them all, albeit we will talk about Rommens and Moore in the most detail. So what do we think we're trying to do here? Because I think Danny Röhl's football is a bit more direct than we've been used to. I think a lot of people wrongly or unfairly categorise it as just hoofball. But if you look at Moore and Rommens, you've got two players there who are very good on the ball. They are physical, they press well, they do attack well. What would you sum that left side up as? What is Danny Röhl trying to do there in possession?
Well, I look at these players and I just think they're extremely functional in that they're players with mobility, right? There's guys that like to move around, but I think how they get there is the interesting part, right? And I think I go back to Biel and Van Bronckhorst teams were pretty bad for this, right? In a sort of positional game sense, it was like a sort of dance. It was okay, the ball goes here and the guy moves here. You know what I mean? It was like this sort of like merry-go-round of this has to happen before something else happens. It was extremely overthought, and I think that's what stunted the speed of play, and more often than not, it just made things a lot harder than they had to be. I think that's maybe where we've sort of removed the ambiguity for this side is left back, you need to be in a high wide left position. Whoever the wide left midfielder is, you need to be in an interior sort of attacking midfielder, but in the left side position. We're going to use quick ball movements while you boys basically get to where you need to be, right?
Yep.
So the ball movements aren't as pattern driven, obviously, as we've saw in the past. It could be just a simple ball into a striker who sets it back into a Raskin who just pops it wide again. It could be a horizontal ball to the right centre back who pings a diagonal into that position, given that Rommens has got himself forward, those plays we've saw before. So that's the sort of cool part for me is it's hard to, from a scouting perspective, if I'm coaching or I'm scouting against Rangers, it's hard to see, is there really a plan of how the ball gets there? No, I think it's up to the boys. It's up to them to figure it out. But from Rangers' perspective, they're telling players these are the areas where you can hurt the opposition. So again, if it's against a back five, Moore's probably a little bit further inside, or if it's against a four, you can maybe make those moves to break the back line, start maybe a little bit wider. So yeah, like I say, mate, I think it's not as linear as, here's how we're going to build it up, but I think it's definitely clear the areas of the part that Röhl wants them to live in,
Yeah, and I keep coming back to that goal against Aberdeen, the first goal against Aberdeen, because it's what gave me the idea to talk about this on this show. It's what it's a really, really good example of how we use players sensibly. I think how often have we spoke about that before, where a manager comes in with a clear idea of how he wants to play and puts players in there that aren't suited to it. Now, I don't want to be hypocritical because I think we've said before, if you have a clear way of playing, you put the best players in the position that you can do. But I think there's a ceiling to that, and I think that cast your mind back to 2 years ago, in the title running, and we had Ross McCausland on the left wing and Dujon Sterling on the right wing because the manager wouldn't adapt after having no wingers. So there's shades of grey, and there's, I guess, exceptions to every rule. But looking at that goal, James Tavernier can't play as that high and wide right fullback every single minute of every single game now. So he's now cutting in to be a back three. At times in possession, you then got Nico Raskin picking up the ball, that long switch of play to find Rommens, try and isolate Rommens in the final third. Again, how often have we spoken on this show about fullbacks hitting the byline and not just smashing a ball in because it's into a dangerous area, but actually winning the ball and having a little bit of finesse in the final third to cut it back from Moore, who I think should score. And it's one of the minor criticisms I think I've got on Moore right now as an 18-year-old. He doesn't quite have the power to generate his shots. I think at the minute, I don't know if that's just him growing or if he's still getting into it. Everything else I think is fantastic, and he has scored some good goals as he did in this game, but it's sort of more finesse things.
Right.
His shot, I think, probably should have scored, but then Chukwuani's there to sweep it up. So all those things that we spoke about, building up in a three, making sure you're defensively secure. When the time comes, switch it over, get a cut back, pick someone out in the box, second wave of attack. I think that goal sums it all up. And I think it probably shows what you're talking about there. It's not necessarily that we will score that goal every single week and we'll have those defined patterns of play, but it's just how do we get the right quality into the right areas, or how do we make the most of what players that we have to try and generate the best chances? I think that goal is a great example of it for me.
Yeah, and listen, you've also got the angles of the attack, right? So you're mentioning obviously the fullback getting to the byline and cutting it back or crossing it over. That obviously suits a team who's going to drop and defend their goal deep, right? Because the space at the top of the box. Whereas, you could have a situation where a team plays a higher line, or certainly just doesn't drop as quickly, right? They like to go man for man in terms of, right, we're going to track runs inside the box. So that probably now favours that lovely interior cross you see Moore play where he whips it to the back post, right? And obviously you need space to attack into. That's not a great ball in if the goalie's just coming out and claiming it every time, right? So this is the interesting part about, you know, that mobility piece and getting them into the positions, but also it's unconventional, right? A lot of the times we've saw in the past, it's a ball from deep from the fullback, right? So it's traveling 30, 40 yards so everyone can read it like a book. Or you've got wingers who are dribbling to the byline, therefore they're basically not involved in the second wave, right? So if a dribbly winger gets to the end line and puts one at the back post, you just have one less at the edge of the 18 for counter press, for secondary shots. Do you know what I mean? It's so I think there's definitely layers to this that are yes, they're well thought out. It's maybe not as micromanaged and meticulous as it's been in the past. But I definitely there's a thought to play here that if Rommens gets to the byline and cuts it back, Moore's still involved, right? Or vice versa. Rommens can come inside and counter press. If the ball turns over.
I think that's right. It's finding that balance, isn't it? I think in the past I've been guilty of let's turn this into an orchestra or something, or everybody knows exactly where they're going. But ultimately,
right,
if you again, probably one of the main themes we've come back to on these shows, I don't really care how we do it. I really don't care how we do it. Rangers need to attack more, create better quality chances, play attacking football, dominate teams. Don't really mind how it happens. Certainly not at this stage, given what everything's been over the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, no criticism for me if we're a little bit more direct, or we're maybe not playing beautiful football, because ultimately where we want to get to is creating lots of chances, scoring lots of goals, and that is where we are just now, which is great. Okay, so we mentioned Migoma and Gassama as the other two that have played a little bit, or have played more often on that left-hand side than anyone else. Talk to me about the differences then between them. I don't know if will we take them as a pair, or do you want to do Migoma versus Rommens first? How would you like to play that?
I think a pair would be good, because I think the outcomes are definitely different from both of them. There's a sort of similar movement there, but yeah, the outcomes I'd say were a wee bit different.
Cool. Okay, so in terms of Migoma then, he does have a fair number of assists, to be fair. I think he's got 4 or 5 this season. It isn't something that I would really align to him, I think, because I can't remember having him having the impact in the final third as Migoma does, as Rommens does. Sorry, I can't really remember him being as hugely involved in build-up as he does. And I think Gassama's probably the same. For me, the issue that I had with both of them was that they are a little bit one-dimensional. Is that too harsh to say? Maybe it's a lot of straight line running, and Gassama doing his one trick that cuts inside. So for me, I didn't think they were a great pair. I thought Migoma and Moore had potential, but yeah, Migoma, I just never really. I wanted them just to have that extra 5 or 10% and get beyond a bit more, and hit the byline in the way that Rommens is doing. So for me, it sort of felt like they were two useful, solid players, but I didn't really feel like they quite meshed as well as Rommens and Moore. What would you say is the sort of standout differences between them for you?
Yeah, well, so it's a tough one, right? Because again, there's definitely ability between both of them, and no doubt both will go on to have a good career. I think what we've saw, first of all, from Migoma is he definitely performs better as a wing back. So that's probably in a back three, and him being as a true wing back is in a five. Given that he's more of a, I wouldn't say more of a ball carrier than Rommens, but I think he likes to be on the ball more. I think Rommens is more suited to off the ball movement, which I'm sure we'll touch on. And oddly enough, you're not going to see many partnerships then. But at the times, I think back, there were a couple of times we played 3-4-3. Certainly at Ibrox in early days of Röhl, we'd done it. So I think it could definitely work with Gassama, but again, it's all these things of, well, okay, we want the cherry on top of the cake, on top of the ice cream, on top of everything, right? It's like, that's lovely to have those things, but if you're looking at it saying, okay, to suit the rest of the team, it's a 4-4-2, having those two right away, there's some major red flags there, just defensively and, off the ball and whatnot. I think if we're looking at this purely from an attack and output perspective, I like Magoma's again, ability to ball carry. I like his crossing. I think he's, again, a good athlete, so he's going to be able to stretch a game for you and put the opposition on the back foot. There's a game at Easter Road, I want to say early, Danny Röhl. Again, just lots of good forward movement that really put Hibs on the back foot early. And these are things that you don't necessarily think of as being, well, Jesus, he pinned a fullback back. Okay, but now that opens up space for a midfielder to pull wide. That opens up space for centre-back to carry the ball. So there's other things that obviously can come from being threatening rather just what he actually does on the ball. I guess the biggest challenge is with a player like Magoma is because he is so one-footed, you know where it's going to go every time. He has to play on the outside. He doesn't come in and cross with his right foot, doesn't shoot with his right foot, doesn't pass off the right very often, right? So to your point there, very, very linear and straight lines, it just becomes, if you've not got the space, then that's right away you've taken away a percentage of his threat there. That in Scotland, there's not many games you're going to get a ton of area to drive into,
Yeah, no, I agree. In terms of the Gassama and Moore comparisons, then I think they're wildly different players, and that's where I think this can be so fascinating. And I think if a manager does come in with a really set way of playing and clearly defined roles, I think that's great. But ultimately, if you don't have the players that allow you to keep doing that consistently, then you're probably going to get into a bit of trouble. And I think they are completely different. Their numbers, their data is actually quite similar. A couple of surprising things to maybe point out. Moore takes more shots than Gassama, just marginally, maybe 10% more shots. Again, maybe not something you think of. It does feel like Gassama just wants to cut inside and hit it quite a lot of the time. But Moore is taking more shots. His passing is kind of similar. Maybe that does seem okay. Gassama wins a lot of fouls. That's like nearly 2.5 times the amount of fouls that Mikey Moore wins. He dribbles more. Again, you probably would think of that. In terms of, I think, the impact of the places that Mikey Moore really has a bigger impact is his work off the ball. I think he wins a lot more balls back than Gassama, and I think that really helps. We mentioned that counter pressure, winning the ball back high up the pitch. Gassama's work off the ball can be a little bit erratic. I think it's maybe kind to say. So yeah, in terms of how they work, I think that is certainly something that is a bit of a difference there. Moore obviously gives you a bit more freedom and unpredictability as well. Is that fair? Like we said, Gassama can be a bit one-dimensional. I have thought for a while that putting Mikey Moore on the right-hand side and Gassama on the left would be a bit of a better option than when the two flip. And just because I think Gassama's so limited when he's on the right, whereas I think Moore could probably play most positions in that sort of behind the attacker and do well. Do you think is that fair? Am I being too harsh on Gassama?
No,
that Moore feels a bit overall rounded?
No, it's fair, right? But again, this is the real interesting part. When you look at scouting, you look at analysis, and actually the outcomes of things, right? Because if you ask two supporters, right? Sorry, if you ask this a regular supporter, what's the difference between these two dribbling styles? Right? Well, unless you're really into the minutiae of football analysis, it's hard to see, right? Like if you both are good at dribbling, so ergo they should just be able to beat players, right? Well, what are they dribbling to achieve, right? What are they seeking to achieve? Are they dribblers? So let's take it a case in point then. So let's go Gassama first. He wants to shoot in his right foot. So your point earlier about wanting to get shots off. So therefore, it's small chops on his right side to offset a defender. So he's trying to basically live in that space between him and his opponent to get the next space, which is to get a shot away, which he's going to do on his right foot, right, which is going to be on the inside. So as a defender, again, it's easier to read, although it's not easy to win the ball. It's easier to read because you know what the eventual outcome is. Moore's, what I really love about Moore's dribbling style is he likes to also dribble off his right foot, but it's almost like he's stumbling, right? And what's smart about it is he's drawn pressure. So basically, he can either pass by you because he doesn't need to dribble past you. His goal of this is to basically set up someone else. It's to play in service of others rather than I need to shoot. So that's why I almost found it odd that he wouldn't play him off the right, because I don't ever see Moore as being a guy, well, I need to get to the end line and cross or come in and shoot on my left foot. Like, I just think he's a good sort of supplier of chances.
Yeah.
It may be, though, again, just the way he's naturally right-sided and likes to come inside. It's just obviously easier to do that off the left. But like I say, that this is the interesting part for me. It's what they're trying to achieve and then how you support that. And like I say, those are two majorly different things from an outcome perspective. Even though, if you just said to any regular punter, but yeah, they're good at dribbling. Like, you know, it's hard to identify that. And what I think we've learned over time from both of them is, did they work better with one striker or two? In the case of obviously the two forwards we've gone, we wouldn't have known this otherwise, right? Or it's certainly in Moore's case, but Gassama were going off a team in Sheffield Wednesday that were obviously completely different to us in game state as well. So these are the things we're learning this on the job, right? We're learning it as we go along, rather than this 5 or 6 years body of evidence we've got to work from, you know.
Yeah, and this is why I think it's so interesting when we start to talk about partnerships and relationships, because Roman, I don't really mean to downplay how well Magoma has done for a 19-year-old coming in, given everything that was happening.
Right.
In this season, I think he's done really well. I just feel like, again, early days, I feel like Rommens is a more complete player, as he probably should be when he's 3 or 4 years older, but he's just got a bit more to him in that respect. He's really good in the air as well, which again is maybe something that you wouldn't necessarily think of. He does feel like a technical player, but he's not a slouch physically. He's got good pace. He's obviously left-footed, but he's not very obviously so left-footed that he can't play on his right as well. He just seems like he's got quite a lot to him. So it's more that I think Rommens is really good rather than any disservice to Magoma. But the partnership part of it, I think, is key as well, because we know that Rommens, before he came, was really, really highly ranked for overlapping runs. He's been great as well. So he gives that platform there that Rommens and Gassama will likely see us get more out of Gassama as well, as it is with Rommens and Moore. So that's where I think it's really fascinating when you get those partnerships coming in. I just think he also gives you that base, like I said, so there's more repeatable patterns of play, which is where it kind of goes from, is it just a bunch of individuals that we're hoofing the ball up to and trying to get something happening? I think with Rommens there, with Chukwuani there, and with Moore, it sort of feels like it is more of it adds a little bit more of a ball playing, repeatable patterns. It's clear who's going to go on the outside, who's going to go on the inside. Just feels like there's more control over how the attacks develop and that second wave of pressure. Is that aligned to what you think?
Definitely. And listen, I think this is where, again, when you break it down, right, we talk about analysis, like Rommens and Magoma. They both like to get forward. Lovely, right? But what are they trying to do when they get there, right? Well, how does that look? Like Rommens, you made a really good stat, or you made a good point actually before he'd signed, that some of the scout reports, he one of the best stats for underlapping runs in the continent or so.
Yeah.
I mean, look how many times he's done that so far. I mean, that must be a joy to play with, right? Knowing that at any stage, this guy's going to get beyond me as a wide player. Magoma has shown he likes to penetrate forward, wants to get forward and wants to get round. But again, it is more of an overlap. So again, what's more predictable? right? Not saying that again they're easy to defend against or better or worse, but it's those things. It's a different dimension where once I think we were wedded to okay, these two players have to do a thing. Now there's just that little bit more creativity they've got to their armour,
Definitely. And I think, I guess, to round off the discussion on this, then again, we can't say that we've not had attacking fullbacks, so we've not had wingers that want to attack. But the structure behind them, I think, is key because it's great if Rommens is doing overlapping runs, underlapping runs. Tavernier has done that for a decade now. If you either can't get back or you don't have the appropriate structure behind you to ward off counter attacks, nobody really cares. So I think it's testament, and we'll come on to this bit now. I think it's testament to the impact of Chukwuani and Fernandez behind them that it does allow those two players that freedom to go and support it. What have you made? Let's take Chukwuani first. Then what have you made of his contributions? I have to say, first, if we're being full disclosure, I wasn't sure a left back was my number one priority in this transfer window. I'm delighted to say it looks like I was probably wrong on that because of everything that he's given. And I thought we needed maybe a defensive midfielder or a creative midfielder, and Chukwuani was sort of, it felt like he was a bit of an all-rounder, and it felt like I was thinking that was a bad thing, but he is an all-rounder as far as I can see so far, and it definitely doesn't seem to be a bad thing. He's plugging gaps everywhere. What's been your thoughts on how he's done, and then also the kind of base that he gives Rommens and Moore?
Yeah, I think similar to Rommens, there's a confidence there, and there's a sort of yeah. So let's talk about it as a profile. I'm not really sure what position he is, to be honest with you, mate, or where he sort of naturally fits in. Right? I mentioned the confidence piece there because he's been asked to do a lot of different things. Right? We played him in a ton of different setups and formations, and he's only been here 2 minutes, so I think he's adapted well. I think it's interesting that it wasn't long into his sort of run where it was like, oh, he's not playing or he's not starting, and that's obviously a good sign, right? That you want your better players playing. I think there's definitely been a accelerated push towards playing the whole game, which again, I don't know his minutes, his previous club, or how those sort of minutes went. I think there was definitely a fitness piece that maybe had to work on, but I also think that's allied to just how we've asked him to play, which is cover a ton of ground, sprint loads, run into people, like get on the end of stuff. So you could have all the fitness training you want. That's a hard thing to adapt to. If where he's coming from, they've not been doing that, So I don't think that's any sort of negative on him. But what I mean by I'm not really sure what position he is. Again, it's a good thing. It's malleable. We're able to coach him, right? He's a young guy. If we see him as a deep creator, if we see him as more of a destroyer, however we see this lad's career going, or certainly the management team see it going, I think he's coachable enough that they can help him get there. The base fundamentals is a good technique, good striker of ball, good athlete. Geez, sign me up. I'll take any player that's got those fundamentals. So added to that, obviously, the sort of physicality piece with a bit of size as well. So yeah, no, I think he's been a terrific signing. And tactically, that was my concern, that we're asking him to cover a lot, defend a lot. Could he sort of manage that? So far, so good, I guess. That's I get where I have been critical of him sometimes is maybe not so much his fault, in the sense there's a feeling I have that he'll go missing in games. And again, I don't mean that because he's hiding, doesn't want the ball. I just think we're so quick to give it to Raskin because he's the guy in midfield, right? That we almost sort of miss him out. It's just easier to give it to Nico because he's there, and he's in that dressing room. He's the main man, and that personality piece, it's a thing, right? So like you're gonna pass to Tav more than you are, Sterling when he plays there. It's a thing, right, in football. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him get a sort of steadier run and a steadier side next year. But certainly early sides, mate, he's been excellent.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Is it maybe more that he's almost rightly or wrongly, the insurance policy, I guess, and that if Raskin does want to demand the ball and be involved in build up and things, then okay. But I kind of see Chukwuani as the connector. I guess that sort of. You're right. He is good technique on the ball. He's really press resistant. The number of second balls and recoveries that he wins are incredible. So that speaks to good positioning, being able to sense danger. All these things that we've wanted from a central midfielder for quite some time. Yes, he isn't a number 6 that can sit there and spray passes. He's also not a box to box number 8, number 10 that can create slip balls through to score easy goals. He is modern, I guess, and I hate using that term because it doesn't really mean very much. But he is doing all those things, supporting the fullback and the winger, offering that extra angle, arriving into the box as we've seen at the weekend. Sometimes playing out on the touchline if Rommens and Moore are both cutting inside. So is it maybe that he's maybe more of an insurance policy? If the ball gets turned over, he's the guy that has to go and press, block the first pass, try and delay the counter attack. So it's maybe his job is doing a little bit more of the dirty work, and maybe Raskin, rightly or wrongly, is the guy that's more involved in the build up for now.
Yeah, let's from a sort of base level, I think it's spot on. I think where the confidence comes in the staff to put him in that position is that, again, when you fully break this down, his tackle technique's good. He doesn't just smash into players, right? It's not like a Lundstrom where he's sort of like, just running into challenges and giving away free kicks all the time. Obviously, there's going to be points where, the guy's defending a 40 by 40 area, right? It's a large space. We're asking the guy. There's going to be times where either doesn't he make his challenge or whatnot, but early signs are he tries to win the ball. It's not like he's, again, just going in and kicking people. So that's certainly a good thing. And then when we talk about the counter press piece, a big part of the counter pressure is that you're intercepting to recreate an attack. Well, if we're just asking a guy to, steam into challenges and give away throw-ins, that's, we're only doing a half a job there. So, yeah, again, I go back to it, mate. We're asking him to do a lot. We're asking him to cover a lot, be there. Like that insurance policy piece is definitely a case because we don't like to pass back a lot, right? There's not a lot of circulation, but in the times that it's there, you got to be good at it. You got to be useful. We're not just giving it to some lump in midfield who, duffs it back to the keeper. We want quality, right? We want everything, really. And he certainly got it. I know.
You mentioned insurance policy there. If Rommens loses the ball in the final third and Mikey Moore's counter pressing doesn't work and Chukwuani's counter pressing doesn't work, there's a small matter of Emmanuel Fernandez behind them to mop things up. Long-term listeners will know I've been a fan of Fernandez pretty much since the first couple of occasions that I've seen him. What's been your take on his rise over the last few months, and what does he give us in terms of a tactical role for that left-sided centre half?
Yeah, it's again just the transformation in the guy. We talk about from a belief perspective, from a comfort level. There's been a lot of guys. I think if you look at someone like Giga, I think there's a oddly enough, I think he's a better defender, right? I think he's a more aggressive player, but he doesn't carry himself like one.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Fernandez definitely carries himself like, I'm a good footballer. Like I'll take it, give me the ball. Like, or if you want to run at me, okay, I'll keep up with you. Now, he is quick. With oddly enough, there was a game at Dundee United where I saw him go at pace, and I think back to them and go, my God, that guy, I must have been rapid he was against, because I don't think I've ever saw it since.
No, same.
But no, he's definitely carrying himself like a starter, and that's good to see that. Again, the staff are giving him the confidence by ultimately picking him and playing him, right, and saying, right, big man, this is your spot here, go and own it type thing. But fundamentally, yeah, again, tackle technique's good, tactically understands the timing of it. I think maybe when he first came, he was a little bit too eager to make that big challenge that gets all the supporters off their seat. Now I think he's a little bit more sort of reserved. Okay, well, I'll be cerebral how I'll win this back. I think just knowing the opposition, right? Just knowing the teams. He saw them all now. He's, they've sat in all the scouting meetings. Maybe Kenny's looking at it going, I'm not playing in League One anymore where I've got 6'8" monsters every week and against me, and the majority of strikers I think physically I can deal with. So yeah, the summation of it all is, mate, you can see there right away, you've got a couple of guys who feel that they belong and they feel that the position's their own.
Yep.
And it's a great thing.
It is. Yeah, if I was summing up Fernandez, I'd say he's a player that I think back to Katic on that side as well, and people would see opposition teams might see that as a weak link. I don't think that's the case with Fernandez. I think he gives you a bit of assurance. I did think at the weekend in the first 20-30 minutes he was playing it like it was a bit of an exhibition game, which again is great when you win the game, but that sort of lack of concentration, language style could probably come back and bite him. There was lots of little flicks and checks and cutbacks and things, which is brilliant to see. But I think that's just the type of person he is. He just looks like a really, really confident guy that is starting to grow into himself. So yeah, if I was summing it up, I'd say he allows you to be on the front foot on that left-hand side, which is really important, particularly at home, instead of maybe starting at the edge of the box or the edge of the left-hand side of the box, and he's starting really, really far back because he's a bit nervous that he's going to lose the ball under pressure. I don't see any of that with him. I think he's quite comfortable starting 10, 15 yards further up. He's really good on the ball. I think underrated on the ball. He's not Connor Goldson, big switches of play or something like that that's going to drive forward and thread balls through. But I think he's use of the ball is really good. Again, can be a little bit slack at times, but I think he really helps with that build up, helping Rangers escape the first line of pressure, giving Rommens confidence to go as well. We talk about Rommens hitting the byline. Not going to do that, or the manager won't want him to do that if he doesn't have that platform behind him, whether it's Chukwuani, whether it's Fernandez. So I think again, it is early days. I don't know how many games they've all played together. Maybe it's 3 or 4 at the minute, but I think it's starting to look like quite a strong side of the pitch.
Yeah, and listen, I think also this is one of the things I was actually disappointed moved away from a back three, and we've saw over time why and the personnel changes, but I think Fernandez is perfect for a wide centre back. Again, I just think he's got all the attributes to be when I think of his career trajectory, let's see him, playing Serie A, I could stroll it, the side of a back three. I know it's a little bit more on vogue there, but it's one where, can defend the sidelines, comfortable going out and defending the ball, still have good in the air to defend centrally. I think in a back four, there's been enough instances we've saw so far from his possession style that suggests he's going to need guys near him. So asking him to play in a real high line, be that controlling centre back who's like a Van Dijk midfielder, I don't think that's him. But that doesn't mean he's not good on the ball. That doesn't mean he can't be impactful. I just think you've got to be more creative in how he, how you get it off him. Essentially, is there someone that we can play near him that can be his creator? And again, I struggle sometimes because I just don't think we've got that passer, that deep passer from the back line in any of the positions really. So I think hopefully that's something we can rectify in the summer.
Yeah, it's always an interesting summer, but it would be nice to go into a summer thinking we just need to find a few roles and profiles that will take us on to the next level or replace some players that are going rather than a full restructure. We will see. There's still a long way to go in the season, and it could go either way as we know with Rangers. Anything else you want to cover on that left hand side, Moore, Rommens in particular?
We've not really touched about this sort of half space sort of wide play. We've spoke about how the players are positioned, but I think it's important that when we talk about these things is that spatially there's still an understanding horizontally, vertically. Yes, we maybe moved away from a positional game, right? But I still think it's important to understand that modern football it's all about pitch coverage, right? You're trying to set yourself up, as we've mentioned a lot during the show, to be successful, both in possession, out of possession. We aren't ever going to go back to, thankfully, the days of a fullback and a winger playing the same channel. I think we're always going to naturally have guys who can come inside and outside. So I think that's only part of the game. anyone who's thinking we're going to go back to 2 out-and-out wingers playing out wide in a 4-4-2, I think those days are long gone. This is what if Röhl sticks with 4-4-2, I see he's going more towards actual midfielders playing out there. You know, I was having this chat with one of the boys who used to coach is up in New York just now, and obviously Forsberg's up there. And I was talking to him about, you know, watching him for the first time playing a Red Bull team where basically you didn't really know what position he was. He was near winger, but he played in the edge of a diamond. And I think it's those type of players that we're missing right now that can shuttle between the two, right? We've either got wingers or we've got midfielders. I'd like to see us recruit boys that are just comfortable playing on the side of the field. Because I think as a football culture in Europe, we've not got a lot of them. And the ones that potentially do play there, we've certainly not saw them in Scotland for a long time. So having those players that can cover those interior channels, I think is going to be important, because thinking of, let's say Gassama is naturally an inverted winger, but it's in the final third he inverts. It's not on the halfway line, right? It's not in the deeper areas, you know. So I think that's something that we hopefully are going to see more of, just to give us, because we've spoke here about we're not really a possession-based team, or certainly that's not the drive. But at some stage, mate, if we see ourselves as a Champions League team, we're going to have to get there, right? You can't, you know, smudge your way through those games, or you're going to get a hiding. So we certainly need to improve in that regard as well.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm quite excited for the summer, because some of those profiles that were linked in January that obviously we never got over the line, but Hierto Dal from Tromsø, I think probably fills what you're talking about there, where he's a central midfielder, but probably more of an attacking central midfielder and could fill one of those positions. And then obviously, I think, was it Silas Anderson was like a number 6,
right.
whether that was one that was if Chukwuani doesn't come, or a different version, I don't know, but we'll definitely need another central midfielder in the summer. So someone like that coming in to be that number 6 could be quite interesting. And then I totally agree. Those two further forward are the ones that come the end of May. I think Moore certainly won't be here, and obviously he might come back next season. We don't know. It doesn't look like Skov Olsen will be coming back. Gassama there was interest in. Everyone else is a little bit jury's out, unproven, not very good. So I definitely think those are a priority. And I think that all that noise about Nadiri and Chermiti not scoring enough goals probably goes away if you've got some guys in there that can either help them contribute better quality chances or finish them themselves. But that being said, since we've moved to this 4-2-2-2-2 more often, with Rommens coming in, we're scoring nearly double the amount of goals we were before that. I think it's Josh put an article out the other day there. It's 2.6 goals per 90 minutes since the Kilmarnock game, and I think we were at 1.6, I think it might have been, by the end of January in the league overall. So considering that we're not getting a lot of goals from our front two, we are still certainly contributing. So yeah, for sure, the next level of that is how do we do that? If Chermiti and Nadiri work as a sort of pressing partnership to force chaos, work off the ball, and we've got two guys arriving in the box from deep that can finish the chances, then yeah, I'm all for it. Okay, I think that'll do us then, Ali. Thank you.
Smash, mate. That was brilliant. Thank you.
And once again, everyone, thank you for the questions, comments, etc. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another show. Thank you.